How we doing, guys? My name's Carmine. I'm actually doing I guess a modeler review, or kind of like a what you're doing during the whole COVID-19 quarantine thing. Mr. Harrison Brown actually asked me to do it on my trains and a little bit on my layout because I actually kind of model something unique and maybe something a little bit different. Well, it's at least different and unique to me in the world of model railroading. First, a little background. I've been doing model trains ever since I was like 5 or 6. As far as like my favorite railroads and my favorite scales, obviously my favorite scale is O scale, although I do collect HO scale. I have some double O gauge. I have some G scale. I have N scale. I pretty much have a little bit of everything. But my primary stuff is O gauge, and I have lots of different models. Now, a few years ago, me and my wife, we moved and we decided to get a little apartment. And naturally, I wanted a train layout. Now, all the years that I was living with my family and things like that, I always had train layouts, but they were always in a nice big 2-car garage or a spare bedroom. Well, we're in a 1-1. It's a little apartment. It's perfect for me and her, but I wanted a train layout, but I wanted something small and compact. Well, she was cool with it. And I decided actually to build my first themed layout. I guess you want to call it a themed layout. And I themed it around Walt Disney World. Now, it's not an exact copy of it, obviously, because it's a 1-bedroom apartment. I can't fit the entire Magic Kingdom in there. So I modeled, obviously, one of my favorite parts of it, which is Main Street, USA. All the buildings on the layout, I'll actually show you guys some pictures of them. They are actually cardboard. And they were pretty much like a pop-out and fold type deal. I added all interior lighting for them. I added different detail interiors, like, for example, the Town Square Theater has an actual chandelier in it. I did Rapunzel's Tower. I have, obviously, the Millennium Falcon up on the very top because I'm a big Star Wars fan, and once Disney bought Lucasfilm, that was the end of that. I 100% was getting a Millennium Falcon. The Magic Kingdom's castle is actually a Lego kit that I actually put my own lighting in, so it actually looks very good. It's very close to O scale, which is like 148, 150, depending on what you can find. Main Street Station here. This was actually released by the Disney parks in the early 2000s. I actually got this when I graduated middle school. And I'm 30 now, so that gives you an idea of how long ago that was. They do pop up occasionally online. They do go for quite a bit more than what they originally sold for. They're like around 200 bucks. But that's just a quick overview. I'll show you guys some more stuff on the layout, but I wanted to focus on the locomotives. Now, if you guys don't have me on Instagram, my Instagram is Fairest of Them All SRT8. That is because I like Snow White. She's my favorite Disney character, plain and simple. Basically, I'm going to explain to you guys and show you guys the model locomotives that I do. And I do rolling stock. My favorite railroad is obviously the Walt Disney World Railroad. Like I said, I know it's kind of unconventional. It's a theme park train. A lot of people call it a theme park ride, which it's technically considered transportation because it gets you from point A to point B at different station stops. But I have a total right now of 6 locomotives. I plan on doing all the locomotives at Walt Disney World, which I have already accomplished. I plan on doing all the ones at the Disneyland Railroad, which is gonna be a chore because most of them are 4nies, which are 244Ts, which I'm gonna have to cut and modify a lot of different things. And I would personally really like to try and take a swing at the Euro Disneyland Railroad stuff. I know they have pretty much 440s. It's just a matter of hunting down all these locomotives that I can find that I can cut and modify. So this is what pretty much they all start out with. Now, this is just a rolly chassis, basically. I've obviously gutted this one and things like that. They started out as MTH 10-wheelers. Obviously, I take them apart. Side rods, whistles, bells, domes, smokestacks, headlights, whatever, and I completely strip them down to bare metal. It's a little bit of a time-consuming process, but you get a cleaner base for your paint to adhere to. So after, let's say, about a month of this, you finally come out to something like this. This was my first locomotive. This is modeled after the Walt Disney World Railroad's #1 Walter E. Disney. It started out as a basic MTH 10-wheeler, stripped it down, repainted it, printed my own decals, and this is what you have. It is a labor of love. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of research. Not that I mind doing that. I really enjoy it. I do try and add some unique little features to all my locomotives. Like, for example, these have flickering ashpan glows. And on all of them, with the exception of Walter, because Walter was my first one, I tried to think a little bit more outside the box with a lot of them. And I'm going to show you with Lillie Belle, that was a chore. But I wanted to do it right, so I did. Walter was the first one I added the flickering ashpan glow to. All the locomotives have custom announcements that I did record on the Walt Disney World Railroad, and I'll show you guys those when I put the other locomotives up. But like I said, Walter's got a flickering ashpan glow. He's got a lighted firebox, smoke, whistle, bell, the whole shebang. So that's Walter. Alrighty guys, next locomotive is number 2. It is the Lillie Belle. So let me bring her around here. This locomotive was a chore, and the reason I even say that is if you look at the wheel arrangement on this thing, it's a 260 as opposed to a 460, which was what Walter and Roger Brody are. So when I got this, and the funny story is I did Walter and I wasn't planning on doing any of the other locomotives, and my wife's like, why don't you do the rest of them? That was the first time my wife has ever been like, oh, well, if you did one, you got to do the rest of them, right? So I took advantage of it, and I started searching and seeing what I could find. So I bought another 10-wheeler from MTH. And because Lillie's a 260, I had to do it right. Now, it's not just a matter of pulling a front wheel off and calling it a day. I mean, I could have done that, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't right to me. If you look at a profile or a picture of the Lillie Belle locomotive from Walt Disney World, not Walt Disney's Lillie Belle, the last drive wheel is spaced much farther from the 2 front drive wheels. Now, I had to emulate that because I was not going to be happy as a modeler if it wasn't at least close. Besides, that's one of the big discerning features that separates Roger from Lillie aesthetically. They're both green locomotives. Really, the only difference is Roger's got a red cab as opposed to a green cab that Lillie Belle has. So I set out on doing that. So basically what I did is I took the entire thing apart again, stripped all the paint, all that fun stuff, took the frame, and I went over with a buddy, because my buddy had a lathe. I drilled through the frame after I took my measurements for where the wheel was going to sit. We drilled it out, and I made a new brass bushing, inserted it into the frame, JB welded it in there real good so it wasn't coming out. Then I tapped the wheel back on, leveled everything. Then I actually took 2 sets of side rods, cut them, sanded them, and I soldered them together so that they would hold so I could make an extension and make a longer side rod to accommodate the spacing of the rear wheel, and it actually worked out really well. The smokestacks are all 3D printed because the smokestacks that come on these things are traditional, like diamond top, you know, stacks. And they are removable. Those are the stacks, real simple. So if I need to transport it, or if I need to get to the smoke generator, it's an easy thing to do. Once again, Lillie Belle's got all custom decals. I'll show you guys pictures of that later on. Now, Lillie Belle was one of the locomotives I started to change some things in. I actually did a complete lighted cab. So I did a small microchip LED up through the firebox. I mounted it on a little brass holder. I built gauges, so the gauges actually have numbers and ticks on them with brass bezels. I made an oil-burning firebox door, which is what the locomotives have. So when you look into the cab, you will actually see an oil-burning firebox door. And she also has the flickering ash pan glow. What I am going to show you on Lillie, they all do it, but I'll show it to you on her since she's here, is the custom announcements that I did, that I recorded from Walt Disney World. I recorded a few of them. So just kind of bear with me here. I'm going to run through them. I hope you can hear them. I mean, they're pretty loud here, but I don't know how the mic is on the phone. But here we go. This is the first one. First one is simple. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Railroad.
Howdy, folks. If you're just joining us, welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Railroad.
That's the first one. Next one I got is Fantasyland. Now, this was before Fantasyland was actually constructed, the new Fantasyland at least, and I plan on leaving this announcement in there until we move into a larger house and I can actually build a Fantasyland. So it's a little outdated, but I'm a stickler for accuracy, and I'd rather have it like this until I have my Fantasyland done. So
It looks like we're almost out of the woods, folks, and we're coming to the outskirts of Fantasyland, a place where any dream can come true.
all right. Next one is one of their steam train spiels that you hear on the route.
There are some who say that this steam train is a little old-fashioned, but for me, it's the only way to travel.
Next one is Main Street. This is my favorite one. This is the one when you hear pulling into Main Street. And it's actually cool because when I got the cast member to record it, they threw a little bit more onto it. So you'll actually hear some, you know, information on what's available on Main Street and things like that. I think it's cool, so.
This is Main Street Station, Main Street, USA.
Main Street Station serves the park entrance, shopping along Main Street, USA, and Cinderella's castle.
I think that's so cool. I love that part. All right, next one is a simple conductor announcement. And it's cool because in the background, I don't know if you can hear it on the phone, but in the background you actually hear the real train with the clickety-clack and stuff, so it kind of adds to the ambiance for me at least. I love that. And the next one is just about the steam train.
By the way, we're traveling on pure steam power. This old locomotive is descended from the mighty train that powered the golden age of steam.
And just a little side note, if you guys don't know, these are all Baldwin Locomotive Works built locomotives. They were all built in the 1900s. Lillie Belle is the youngest. She was built in 1928. The oldest is Roy. He was built in 1915, if I remember correctly. I believe it was 1915, or it might be 1916. I'll double check and I'll let you know. And the two brother locomotives, Roger and Walter, were built in 1925, I believe, and they were actually built next to each other. So they're two consecutive numbers. Now on the locomotives too, before I do the final sound, there's a little locomotive builder's plate. When the decals were made, I took the images that I took of each locomotive's builder plate and scaled them down and used them. So whatever you see on the locomotive is the actual picture of the builder's plate on the locomotive in the park. That's kind of like a little hidden thing, something I'm only going to care about and I only know, but I still think it's cool. So here's the last announcement.
Howdy, folks. If you're just joining us,
And that's all of them, guys. And I'm going to show you Roger Brody. He's number 3. Alrighty, guys. The next locomotive up is number 3, Roger E. Brody. So let me bring him around here. Alrighty, this is the 3rd locomotive in the Walt Disney World Railroad's roster. This is actually the brother or sister locomotive, however you want to say it, to number 1, Walter E. Disney. Like I said, they were sequentially numbered, so this one was built right next to the Walter E. Disney locomotive. This is named after one of Walt Disney's great friends, a gentleman named, obviously, Roger E. Brody. He was the head machinist in the Walt Disney machine shops when they were building the park. He was actually the gentleman that taught Walt how to build and machine on lathes and things like that. And he actually helped Walter build his 1/8 scale Lillie Belle locomotive that ran around his backyard in Holmby Hills, California for the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad. Now, Mr. Brody's son, Michael Brody, is still around. He runs the Carrollwood Society. They are a group that I am a part of. I met Mike many times. He's a great guy. Me and him keep in contact every once in a while. The last time I went up there, they have the meeting every year. I actually finished Roger. I was planning on building it and bringing it regardless, but at that time, I pretty much finished up Lillie Belle and Roy, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to bring them all, so I had to find a way to transport them. I didn't want to put them back in their original boxes, so I'll show pictures of that as well. I went out and I got, of all things, I know this is terrible, a rifle case. But it's a pluck foam case, so I actually fit all 4 of the locomotives in there with my Carrollwood Society pin. I have a spike from the railroad and a cross-section of rail from the railroad in the original 70s. It all fits in there. And I actually had brass nameplates made for the locomotives. Like I said, I will put a picture up so you guys can see that. It's a wonderful little thing. Now, granted, when I brought the locomotive for Mr. Michael to sign, it was not in that. I did actually just put that thing back in its original box just to get it, because we were actually meeting at the AMC Theater in downtown Disney, which is Disney Springs now. Mike didn't know anything about the engine, that it was happening. I've kept in touch with his son, Steve Brody. Me and him are good buddies. We talk here and there. When I brought the locomotive, Mike seemed kind of in shock, and I was kind of honored because I know some people have built G-scale models for the Carrollwood barn and stuff like that, and Mike signed the locomotive for me. He was thrilled about it. He thought it was awesome. He talked to me about it pretty much the whole weekend, and I am planning, when I finish up this next locomotive here, I will eventually garner enough parts to build Mike one too for his desk. I think it would be an honor to have my work there. He thought it was really cool. He's seen my layout. He thinks it's awesome. He's a great guy. You know, if I have any questions, he's always willing to help. I try and go to that Carrollwood Society meeting every year. It's a great meeting. I also hit Mickey's Not So Scary when I'm up there usually. It's a great time. But Roger E. Brody, same deal. He's got the lighted interior with the gauges. He's got the lighted ashpan glow, the announcements, all the custom decals, and everything. So that is number 3, Roger E. Brody. Now we're going to be going on to our 4th locomotive. Alrighty, guys, here comes our 4th locomotive. This is locomotive number 4, Roy O. Disney. This is locomotive number 4, Royal Disney. He is a 440 American class locomotive. The oldest one in the park, actually. It's 1916. It's actually funny because when I decided to do Roy and I was looking for a 440, I was jumping between the MTH Premier line, which is what he is, and the MTH Rail King. Now, the Rail Kings have a squared off boiler front, which I didn't think suited Roy as much. He's a little bit of a bigger locomotive anyway. So I ended up biting the bullet and just going with the Premier line one. I don't regret it. I love it. It looks great. And it was actually kind of uncanny because all the other locomotives I have are Proto Sound 3.0, which is the newest sound system, so like LED headlights and all that fun stuff. This happens to be Proto Sound 2. So it's weird because it's an older sound system and it's the older locomotive in the park. So I just thought that was kind of funny. The only thing on this, that smoke unit, the whining is horrendous. I actually have to take the thing apart and oil it a little bit because that whining is crazy. And you will notice that the sound is a little bit lower on this one because it's a smaller ohm speaker. I will be replacing the speaker eventually. So, anyway, this is number 4, Royal Disney. This started out as a Premier Line Union Pacific 119, one of the Golden Spike locomotives. I stripped the entire thing apart. I actually got the locomotive on a trade. I traded another engine for this one because and I tend to find that most people are not interested in these early era locomotives. I'm like the one odd guy, with the exception of HO scale aficionados and stuff like that. Anyway, took the entire thing apart, you know, went through the whole thing with it, decals, paint, high gloss, I mean, you name it, I did it on this locomotive. I actually changed the whistle. The whistle on this thing originally protruded from the backside. I actually filled the hole in and put a new whistle on there so it actually matched the Walt Disney World Railroad ones. I moved the air pump from one side to the other and put a larger air pump such as the ones at the park have. Headlight was changed. The smokestack was a 3D print as well. And the tender, if you noticed on some of the other tenders, they all have wood loads. Now I know in the park there's no wood loads on the trains because they fire, you know, number 2 diesel fuel or oil or whatever you want to call it. This one had a coal load. So when I actually stripped the paint, I took all the coal off because it was separately applied. And I made this one a true oil burner. So I made my own hatches for the top of the tender and stuff like that. I'll show you guys more pictures of that as we go on. But this is number 4, Royal Disney. I think he is one of my favorite. He's the most dainty looking one, I would say, out of all of them, and I just think he's awesome looking. So, on to number 5. Alrighty, guys, now the last locomotive I have here, I'm going to show you. This is locomotive number 5. Now, there's a couple reasons I did this. The first reason is I felt like Disneyland Railroad, they had a number 5 locomotive, which is the Ward Kimball. So why couldn't us East Coast guys have one? So I kind of made my own what-if locomotive to go along with my custom consist. Now I will silence the sounds on the engine and kind of go through each individual car. I'll pull them up and let you guys look at them. There is one car I could not fit on here because it is just inordinately long because of its load, that it won't take the curves, but I will show you guys that separately. The other reason was I just had another 10-wheeler laying around and I just felt like it was time to do something completely different, and I wanted to kind of push myself and see if I could work with a certain color palette. Like if I picked these certain colors for this reason, can I make them work on a train or a locomotive and will it look good? And I think I honestly accomplished that. Another reason was because Disneyland has the number 5 Ward Kimball. I felt like it was a thing that I wanted to honor one of his cartoon characters, and also it being my favorite cartoon character, I honored Snow White. So, you know, it kind of is a mirror image of the Ward Kimball out at the Disneyland Railroad, but it's a, you know, Walt Disney World Railroad locomotive. Plus, it goes well with my consist, because my consist of cars that I built and that I am building is a bunch of fantasy cars, so they like represent different Disney rides or attractions or characters and things like that. So let me show you the locomotive. I'll pull her up here. This is the Walt Disney World Railroad number 5. I named it Snow White after, of course, the Disney princess and one of Ward Kimball's famous cartoons. He actually developed Snow White, Jiminy Cricket, a bunch of different ones, Dumbo, Casey Jr., the list goes on and on. He was one of Walt's original 9 old men, one of the head Disney animators. He was also a big train nerd, as evidenced by his Grizzly Flats Railroad. If you guys don't know what that is, Ward Kimball had a full-size narrow gauge railroad in his backyard in California, which I've actually emulated on a smaller scale, but in the back of my apartment complex. My neighbors think I'm completely insane, but they all love it. They think it's great. It's different. Right here. This is number 5. This is Snow White. The color combination, if you guys can't tell, I took it from her dress. Now, the colors I used, they're very vibrant and they pop, and they're, you know, it's a really unique and bright color palette. And it actually took me, I'd say, a good 2 or 3 weeks to figure out how I wanted to use these colors. I was gonna use them no matter what. Like, that was the thing. But I must have taken 3 or 4 pictures of this engine and photoshopped colors in different spots, and this is actually what I finally came out with. And I love it. It just reminds me of a cookie, like a cake. It's just, it's so dainty, it's so pretty, it's elegant, but it's playful and it's cheerful. Some of the things I did on this locomotive, I actually completely changed the smokestack. It's a small tapered stack. I actually used the headlight off of the 119, which is the Premier Line locomotive. I modified it to work for the Rail King here. It just gives the engine that much of a different look that sets it apart from the park locomotives. However, it does look like something that they could maybe use in the park. Because it's a Baldwin Locomotive Works locomotive, I did do the Baldwin builder's plate in between the drivers. I just thought the gold and some of the more brass trims would just add to the elegance of this. My favorite part in this entire locomotive is this bell. It's like a photo etch metal and brass bell. It's got these really elegant curves and swirls and stuff, and that actually came off of the Premier Line locomotive as well. I did it in a red highlighting tone. I think it looks killer. Obviously, I numbered it number 5 because it would be the 5th locomotive on the Walt Disney World Railroad. Number 5 also was kind of like my lucky number throughout my entire life. Number 5 was always the number that was coming up with me, as well as number 17, which is kind of odd because number 17 was the day that Disneyland opened, and it's also my wife's birthday, so it kind of all works out. I got a lighted back head, gauges, firebox, flickering ashpan glow. I mean, it's got everything. I even have a small 3D printed model of Ward Kimball that operates the locomotive. He's on the other side, so you can't really see him. So now I'm going to pull this forward and let you guys take a peek at some of the custom cars that I did. So we're going to do it with the sound off so it's not blaring loud, but I'll go nice and slow here. So the first car that I got here, this Boxcar, this is actually, I call it an autograph car. And this actually came about when I first did Walter and I was doing a consist for him. I wanted something that would stand out and be different. So I had the brilliant idea of buying just a Rail King wood-sided boxcar, painted it red to match the locomotive, did my own logos, and I took it to the park and I had all the characters sign it. So once I got that all signed and stuff like that, I don't want to tell you what security, the kind of look security gave me bringing this into there. It was odd. I had all the characters sign it, and now it's a nice little interesting part of the layout. And, you know, the kids get a kick out of it because they see, you know, Snow White signed it, Ariel, Elsa, Anna, all that fun stuff. So the next car up is the Thunder Mountain Railroad car. This I built, say, about a year ago, maybe a little less. I actually designed it around the Big Thunder Mining Company, which is the company that technically owns the Thunder Mountain Railroad. I did the graphics like a Denver and Rio Grande with the swoosh logo. I thought it added to that and looked really, really cool and really, really different. Did some barrels and crates and stuff like that, tie downs in the locomotive and the rider car. I did weather it a little bit. The dynamite sticks are actually wire that I just cut to length, glued them in place. I even have the Thunder Mountain goat with a stick of dynamite in his hand, and on the other side, I don't know if you can see it very well, there is a miner going, no, come on, give me it back. So I just thought that was kind of a cool thing. Now, another thing about this car is that when I went up to the Carrollwood meeting, Mr. Tony Baxter was there. Great guy. Talked to him for hours. You know, knew he designed Thunder Mountain, and I brought this car. Gentleman actually signed it for me on the bottom. So that's another one of my little treasures. I'll actually show you guys photos of that going on. The thing throughout that entire trip that actually like hit home with me, that honored me more than anything, is we went to the there was a live steamer club up there, and we went with Michael and Tony and all that, and we were riding the trains around and stuff like that. And my one buddy that was with me, that's an engineer on the railroad, he was talking with some of the guys, like, oh yeah, you know, Carmine did a bunch of these model trains, you should come out there and see him. So Tony and Michael came out, because Michael knew about my model trains. And when I put the case down and opened it up, Tony Baxter said, wow, these are astonishing, and took pictures. And it's actually funny because my buddy got a picture of Tony Baxter taking pictures of my models. And to hear that from a Disney legend that, wow, these are astonishing, like, that was the biggest compliment I think anyone's could have ever paid me. Like I said, Tony Baxter was a great guy. I talked to him for hours. We did a luncheon and stuff like that, you know, just picked his brain. Great guy, you know, can't say enough good things about him and Mike. So next car up is the Big Thunder Mining Company, but this is a gold car. Obviously, Big Thunder Mountain mines gold. So I took a standard Lionel mint car, stripped it all down, repainted it. And I actually repainted it in the colors of the Thunder Mountain locomotives. So you will see the red, the black, the brown, different things like that. What I did do differently is I put lights inside of this to help the gold sparkle and illuminate. So it's got 2 nano chip LEDs in the top, and it actually looks really, really cool at night. So next car I think is my favorite car, is the Cinderella Depress center flat car. This came out of the whole idea of, this was actually one of the first cars, let me back it up a little, I don't know if it's in camera frame, but this was actually one of the first cars I thought about doing. So I found a Depress center flat car, I found a model of Cinderella's carriage, I painted it, did whatever I had to do, did tie downs, and then I just kind of went a little bit nuts. I did the pumpkins, I did the vines, there's all vines in the truck and stuff like that. And honestly, it's really cool. It's different, it's elegant, it adds to like the flavor, you know, that the whole aspect that the railroad in the park does something. It transports vehicles and characters and things like that, and it's an interwoven part of the society of the Magic Kingdom, and that's what I really wanted to emulate. So that's the Cinderella car. I think that's one of my favorites. It's definitely cool. The next car I decided to do was the Alice in Wonderland car. Now everybody knows the teacups. The teacups are a very, very famous ride at the Magic Kingdom, both in Disneyland and here. So I did a couple of teacups. They do rotate. Did a custom 3D printed Cheshire Cat, small bottle with the Drink Me liquid. I even have the Drink Me label here. I have a small book that says Alice in Wonderland, a little bit of a little table, and I also have the Queen's playing cards. Now on the top of the car, I don't know if you can see it, but there is kind of like a purple and pink magenta wave pattern to emulate like the fantasy and like the trippy atmosphere that Alice in Wonderland emulates, as well as the car trucks being 2 different colors, and they're actually alternating on other sides. So this side that's purple, it's that dark magenta pink on the other side. The next car I just threw together just because I felt like I wanted just a unique, you know, just a simple piece of rolling stock, was a Walt Disney World Railroad refrigerator car. I'm still kind of debating on what I want to do with this. I may put more decals on it. I don't know. I just like it. It's simple. I really originally did it to go behind Roger Brody because his consist is yellow. His passenger cars are actually yellow. So I did it just to kind of compliment Roger. But I just kind of like it. It's simple. The last car I have isn't actually something I did. I just always have it on this train because I thought it goes with it. It's an MTH model of the Carrollwood Pacific Caboose. The Carrollwood Pacific being, like I said, the railroad Walt Disney had in his backyard. MTH made these. They made a very limited run of these. They were available at the Walt Disney Family Museum. I don't believe they're made anymore. Lowell Smith, which is the gentleman that makes the N-scale cars every year for like D23 and stuff like that, he actually produced these. They're wonderful little models. I have two. I have one in the original box and I have one that I can run. I love it. It's just a great little car. It kind of goes with anything, especially Disney related, and it's just phenomenal. So that's my entire consist. I am going to go get one more car and I'll let you guys see that monstrosity. This thing. So when I set out to make a 20,000 Leagues car, I knew I always wanted to. The issue I ran into was, there was actually two. The first one is, what scale can I make it so that it's believable? Because if I was to get a real 1/48 scale Nautilus, the thing would be like 4 feet or 5 feet long. It'd be huge. I mean, not that I wouldn't ever want that, like to put in a harbor or something, but I had to make it big enough to where it went with everything, where it kind of blended in well, but it was still realistic enough. So I ended up coming across a company that makes these resin molds. So that's what this is. This is a resin kit that I did of the Nautilus. So obviously I painted it up. I did more of like the bronze, like Jules Verne type scheme. I did some bronze chains, which actually are removable, because when I try and transport this car, I like to take the submarine off because God forbid something happen. But I did the car in like the steel graphite and the bronze colors to match the submarine and to match that steampunky version. And it's actually funny because I came out with this car and literally about a month later, Lowell Smith came out with his car for D23, which is the N-scale variant. So these only came out at D23. No one knew what was coming out until the day. And it was actually funny that this came out like 2 or 3 days before he put this one out. So it was kind of uncanny. So now I happen to have an N-scale version and an O-scale version. But it was just funny that great minds think alike, because I love Lowell Smith stuff. They're awesome. The car is a Atlas O 89 foot flat car, I believe. It's all die-cast metal. The thing weighs a ton. The stands I 3D printed for the submarine. I do have some foam on there to help protect the paint. I know that I also wanted to do something else in this flat car. I didn't want to just have the Nautilus on there. So for about a week, I tossed around ideas. I 3D printed some of the divers from 20,000 Leagues, but they were O scale, but they didn't look good with the submarine because they were so freaking big. And one day I was sitting at home and I was looking at a rubber squid I had, and I was like, oh my God, I know what I'm going to do. So I made a little box, which is what this is, drilled a bunch of holes in it, and put the squid arms in it. So now it looks like Captain Nemo finally got the giant squid, and I think it adds to it, and I think it looks really cool. I absolutely love it. And this car has definitely been a massive hit when I brought the train to shows and things like that. I don't like to bring the car very much because, like I said, it is so big and so heavy, and if something happens to it, I'm going to lose my mind. But it actually has a detailed wheelhouse, so if you look inside of there, there is the helm and the depth tubes and all that fun stuff. I was actually going to light this up, but I felt like with all the effort that went into it and me wanting to remove it, I didn't want any wires sticking out anywhere. I wanted it to be as clean as possible. And I figured, you know, this thing is not going to be lit when it's on the car. So I just kind of let it ride. I originally wanted to do the theme park ride itself, the vehicles. But I didn't want to just buy something ready to go. Like, I prefer to build it on my own. I went and looked for some different 3D files. There was really nothing out there, and then I just ended up settling on the actual vehicle because, to be honest with you, the Nautilus, not the theme park ride one, but the Nautilus is so iconic and it looks so cool that this is what I went with, and I just think it was the right decision, and everybody tends to love it. So I'm going to show you guys one more thing. It's my current work in progress, and then that'll be it. And I will also input some different photos and videos and stuff I have of my different trains running and my layouts and all that kind of stuff. So coming up is my last work in progress. Alrighty guys, this is my last work in progress. I finally decided to do the Disneyland Railroad locomotives. First locomotive I decided to do was the number 2 EP Ripley. It was also, from what I've read, it was Walt's favorite. So I thought it was necessary to do that, and eventually when I do a larger layout, I will like to have both sides of the Walt Disney World empire. So I'd like to have Disneyland as West Coast, and I'd like to have Walt Disney World as East Coast, and I plan on having both stations, so I thought making the locomotives interchangeable, I thought it was a smart decision. The livery I'm doing on this is actually for the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad, so I'm actually leaning more towards the opening day scheme in 1955 as opposed to the traditional Disneyland Railroad that you guys see today. Plus it gives me an excuse to do the Retlaw 1 passenger cars and the Retlaw 2 freight set with the CK Holiday, and I can't wait to start those. That's going to be a lot of fun, those passenger cars. Like I said, it's a work in progress. My basic paint and stuff's done. I'm currently working on my decals and stuff like this. I have my 3D printed smokestack, 3D printed headlight. My cab interior is all there. I did the oil burning firebox door. I was gonna do a flickering ash pan and firebox on this thing, but there is, when I tell you there is no room in these things, these 440s, I didn't think that there was really no room. Like, the motor is literally up against the back head. There's no possible way that I can route wires efficiently with plugs that I can take the top off if I need to do maintenance without it becoming an absolute headache. Like, I can't even fathom it. So it's not going to get those things. But what it's going to make up for in fancy things like that, I'll surpass it in paint and detail, hopefully. It's coming along great. So far, I'm in love with it. I plan on doing it a very high gloss, or as glossy as I can get it. You know, that's it, man. I'll keep posting updates and stuff like that on this locomotive on Instagram as I get other projects done, or as I start projects. You'll see it on there. I tend to use Instagram and Facebook as my, I guess you want to say, like my virtual diary on my projects that I do. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always looking to help fellow modelers, especially with Disney related train things like that. I do custom models, so if you guys are interested in having one of these done for yourselves as a commission or whatever, please message me. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. But I hope you enjoyed this little tour of my mini Magic Kingdom and its roster of locomotives and cars, and thanks for watching, guys.